Hello, guys, and welcome to this week's episode. So, this week we shall be doing just a procedural flight from JKIA to Seychelles. Like I promised, I'll start creating my videos on Vatsim, so I figured out a few tweaks here and there to kind of get that going. I'm still familiarizing myself with this 777 aircraft, so I haven't really explored all the features, so my video for the FMC as our standard procedure when creating these videos on these aircraft, so I should release that maybe by next week. Also looking towards setting up Streamlabs so that you can have live flights, coverage of live flights. So hopefully by the next video next week I should have all that in place. So in the meantime, we're just going to perform this flight on Vatsim and see how we can do a nice flight as we get accustomed to this aircraft from Nairobi to Seychelles. Enjoy the video.
This is Jomo Kenyatta Airport Terminal Information Hawker. 18000. Expect IFR approach. Runway 06. All international arrivals runway 06 vacate right. Squawk standby on the ground. Wind 020 at 3. Visibility 9999. Ceiling 2200 broken. Temperature 20. 2.15. QNH1020. On first contact with Nairobi ATC, advise receipt of information offer. Advise on initial contact, you have information offer. This is Jomo Kenyatta Airport Terminal Information offer. 18000. Expect IFR approach. Runway 06. All inter...
Nairobi Tower, good evening. This is Kenya 304 Boeing 777-300ER. We're parked at gate 14 with information Oscar requesting IFR clearance to Seychelles.
Kenya 304, good evening, sir. Please report to Seychelles, flight level 350. Expect runway 06 at with 1 Delta departure, Evoco transition. Climb initially, flight level 190, squawk 1764, and pressure frequency is 122.8.
Flight level expected 350, runway 6, SID ATU1D to Ivogo, transition level 190, squawk 1764, will contact 123.8 upon departure. Kenya 304.
Kenya 304, departure frequency is 122.8 unicorn, and the river correct for the propulsion start.
Correction for that, 122.8, sorry, we'll report ready for pushback. Our nav data is out of date, but we shall have the flight engineers do that some other time, not in this flight. Okay, position initialized. We're in JKIA or HKJK. Gate 14. So we have our coordinates there. We select our coordinates and there we go. We now can start programming our route. So we again put in our departure airport HKJK. We are heading to Seychelles, which is FSIA or Foxtrot September India Alpha. The flight number is Kilo Quebec Alpha 258. So Kilo Quebec Alpha 258. Oops. 258. Now we had pre-programmed this. No, I don't think we have a pre-programmed route, so I'm just going to head over to SimBrief and export the route onto the nav data. Right, so copied the flight plan from SimBrief onto the route. Let's request the route. One thing I love about this 777 is it's very intelligent, so it picks the right route. You don't get a bombardment of routes to pick. There we go. So it seems to have found the route, so we load the route. Takes a couple of seconds to upload, and usually we would have to go through this with the first officer, but since I'm the only one in the plane and I'm pretty sure about the route, I will activate it. So we now move on to perform the initialization. So you can see we have quite a bit of fuel there, so I'm just going to go back and set the fuel and payloads, and then we shall proceed with the initialization. So okay, so for this trip we're going to need 125,000 lbs of fuel. Converting that to kilograms, roughly about 80,000. So not sure, but yes. So we are gonna go with half tank of fuel, which is roughly about 125, almost half, not quite there, but almost half. This aircraft tank is pretty large, so 125,000 lbs. You can see APUs have already sucked out 16 past couple of seconds, so this is a pretty power hungry plane. Right, payload. We're going with going to expect. Let me just check my load sheets, and then we'll set the passengers as well. So from load sheet we've got 353. So 353 minus 8. 200. We take out 8 passengers for first class. We'll also take out 42 passengers for business, which leaves us with 302. Yep. So we've got 302. Forward and aft cargoes, that's fine. Then now we shall proceed with our initialization. So let's go back to the main menu. FMC, you can see it has received some data. We shall accept. This is one thing I love about the 777. It's very, very smart. So you can see it's given us our zero fuel weight based on our load sheets. It looks pretty fine. We're going to fly with our zero fuel weight there. It's 205.9, which looks fine. Got everything there looking quite okay. So we'll just go to our thrust or takeoff. We're not gonna do a derated takeoff. We can, but I don't want to complicate things. I'm still trying to familiarize myself with this aircraft, so I'm just gonna keep it as it is. Take off. So we'll be taking off with flaps 5. Our center of gravity or payload. It's 36.8, which should give us a trim of 3.25. We've not quite, something is missing there. We're supposed to get our takeoff speeds, so let's just troubleshoot that. Oops. So let's repeat that process again. Oops. Okay. The reason we are not getting our calculation for V1 VR, I believe I have not put my SID. So we've been cleared to ATU-1D via Ivogo. So ATU-D1D. runway 6, execute. Yes, now we have our takeoff speed. So yes, this plane is very intelligent, but it makes work very easy. So we have our V1 175, VR 183, V2 189. Not gonna do a derated takeoff, so we'll pretty much set up the takeoff performance. Let's now do the approach. Well, I'm presuming there's not gonna be ATC that side, so if at all there is, we're gonna change it. But since this is a route I commonly fly, I'm just going to put in some information there. I'm going to put in rather our approach, and I'll put in the star details. So for our approach, we'll need 30 degrees of flaps at 145. 30 degrees of flaps at 145 knots, and from there it will be able to calculate our VF speed as we approach the runway. So let's go back, because this I always do the flight from Seychelles, so I'm going to save this because we're doing it from Jomo Kenyatta to Seychelles. So I'm going to save that. Just call it HKJK SIA. Okay, execute. So we'll save that panel state for faster loading next time. Back to the menu. FMC, we've set our position, we've set our performance. FMC is pretty much good to go for now. So we are going to set our EFIS panel. We'll fly to we'll fly to 11 flight level 10 as we do our SID. Turn on our flight directors. We set our vertical speed. We should climb, that's a fairly decent speed. We just set the runway heading for now, but ideally we will fly with LNAV. Set our takeoff speeds for climb. I usually leave it at 200 knots. By the time the aircraft gets to 200 knots, you're basically performing your SID. It's pretty ideal. What else do we need to set on the EFIS panel? Auto throttle is armed. We set our RTO, reject takeoff. We've set our vertical speed, we've set our initial altitude. We should expect altitude increase based on our clearance. So we now set our QNH, which from ATIS, our QNH is whoa 1020. Here cause trouble. Oh boy. (1020) kilopascals. Sorry, I usually find this 777 barometer knob is quite sticky on the mouse, so I usually struggle with that. So we've said all that. Let's proceed with the rest of the startup of the aircraft. So we check our passenger oxygen, or rather our pilot oxygen, in case anything happens. We have a backup oxygen supply. Window heat on. Our ram air turbine. This is a small fan that pops out from the belly of the plane. Should we lose all electrics and power in the aircraft, it usually just provides supplementary power, things to do with primary flight display and a few navigation instruments. So that's what the ram air turbine usually is for. So make sure that's closed. We leave the hydraulics for now. Our passenger seatbelt signs, turn them on since we are not refueling. You can adjust the brightness, looks pretty good to me. Landing lights off. Let's do a cargo hold fire test. We press that button right there. Wow, today it's working. Yes. Auto start switches on. Fuel jettison, leave everything there as is. Anti-ice, leave it as it is. Nav lights, we've got them on. Equipment cooling, auto recirculation, fans. We need to make sure they're on, which they are. We've got our gas bar, flight deck, cabin temperature we can adjust as is, but that's okay. We turn on our packs left and right. Oops. Trim air switches, all that we leave it as it is. It looks pretty good to me. Pressurization, good thing with this plane, it's all automatic, so no need to worry about that. Right, so we now move on swiftly. Make sure our parking brake is set. Switch on our VHF 1. Yes, we've been using that. Check our trims are set to 0. Rudder trim. Okay, let's look at that as well. Early on trim. Okay. Let's set our squawk code. Our squawk code ATC clearance gave us a squawk code of 1764. 1764. So here's our TCAS transponder. 1764. Oops. There we go. Well, I don't think you're supposed to turn that on right now, so I'll leave that there. Make sure our doors are closed. So let's just have a quick look. Close all the doors. FS actions. Doors close. Arm. All that is set, so let's leave that back for now. Let's just have a look at our checklist. First, let's just see the doors. Yes, we have all greens. So let's look at our checklist. Pre-flight checklist. Oxygen, we've checked. Oops. Flight instruments, checked. Heading, altimeter, parking brake we've set. Fuel control switches are cut off, but they're off. So before start checklist, our flight deck doors are closed. Our MCP, we've set our V1, V2 rotation speeds. We've set our takeoff speeds. We've done CDU pre-flight. Since I'm alone, I'm not a co-pilot, so you can see we've done. We've checked our trim. We've done our taxi and takeoff briefing. So we're going to turn on the beacons. Indicate that we are now getting ready to move the aircraft. Start the engines. So this is the point that we will request ATC for pushback and startup. Nairobi Tower, Kenya 304 is now ready for startup and pushback. ATC is left, so we do not have any ATC coverage. So we're just going to announce our intentions on a Unicom frequency and do our flight controls test and start the pushback. Nairobi traffic, Kenya 304 Boeing 777 is at gate 14, getting ready for pushback and startup. So we usually report to the Unicom on any coming traffic our intentions. Then we just do a flight controls test. Okay. Then we get ready for pushback. So we initiate pushback. Let's just go to our menu, FS actions. We are at gate 14, so we'll push back 90 degrees facing east and take off. So, or taxi to the runway, sorry. Let's just make sure ground connections, wheel chocks have been removed. Reload. So we push back 90 degrees. Right. So we initiate the pushback.
Ground, cockpit. Right, Captain.
And and then we go ahead and we set the hydraulics. So we start with right hydraulic, and then we set the center. Oops, I always inadvertently turn that off. And then we set the left, and then we turn on our fuel pumps, center pumps, left, right. Make sure our beacon is on, and then we now can release the parking brake.
Okay, parking brake is on, clear to push.
And start up the engines.
Brakes off, here we go.
So, aircraft is on. We set our stub trim, which was 3.2. Doesn't really, oops, turned on the autopilot by mistake. We set our stub trim, which is 3.2. It doesn't really have to always be exact, so we can assume 3.2 is somewhere there. Yep. Now we turn on our TCAS, switch off our APU. The good thing with this aircraft is it cools itself down, so we turn that off, or rather the APU, you don't have to wait, it will automatically do everything. So turn on our taxi lights, set our flaps, TCAS, flight controls. Let's just check our flight controls one more time. I think I checked them too early, but it's better to check twice than to check none. So full left, center, full right, full forward, full back, left rudder, right rudder. Looks good to go. We just load up our before taxi checklist. So before taxi checklist, so we seem to have jumped there. So before taxi checklist, Anti-ice, we don't need that. Recall. Your recall switch there checked. Auto brake RTO, flight controls checked. Ground equipment. Make sure our ground equipment is clear. Yep. Looks good. Normal. So now we go to our before takeoff checklist, and I think we are pretty much configured for taxi. Let's just do a quick scan, make sure that we've set everything ready. Check our EFS panel. For now, let's remove this. Everything looks good to go. We have our transponder on. We are on the Unicom. So we'll just make an announcement on the Unicom stating our intentions and begin our taxi. Kenya 304 is at gate 14 now, taxiing to runway 06 for departure. Oops. Forgot to do something. Wasted 3 hours. This plane is massive. You have to be careful with the 777. If you do not take the corners correctly, you will end up puncturing your tires before you go anywhere, because as you can see, the taxiway lights are very, very few inches apart from the tires. It's a pretty wide plane. Nairobi traffic. Kenya 304 is holding short at runway 6. Will depart in 1 minute. So now that we have stated our intentions on the Unicom, let's do our before takeoff checklist. Our flaps are set. Am I missing something? Oh, there we are. So flaps set to 5. Seems not to be accepting that. Don't know why. And oops, sorry. That's because we have 1 degree flaps. Let's go back. So before takeoff, flaps set to 5. Done. And next will be our after takeoff. So flap set to 5, we turn on our runway turn off lights, landing lights, strobes, turn off our taxi lights. We can leave the billboards off because it's still daylight, and we're good to go. The 777 you can see is pretty large, so getting it to the center line is quite a process. So now on the center line, make sure everything is set. Strobes, one last final check, and we are good to go. So we'll set takeoff thrust, monitor the exhaust gas temperature, let it stabilize, then we'll set takeoff thrust. Sorry, after. It is stable. Very knots. Set autopilot, set LNAV. What I like with its plane, RTO comes back by itself. Unlike the 737, you would have to set that. Okay, I'm not gonna turn on and out of throttle just yet. Just monitor the speeds there. You I said, this plane is quite powerful, so before you know it, you're already back. You're already past 220 knots. So our SID requires us not to go beyond that speed, so I'll just set the auto throttle now at 220 knots. Slowly pull up the flaps. After takeoff checklist, landing gear up. Nairobi traffic, Kenya 305 is now airborne. State our intentions. Now ATC. So we should cross Atudu at 11,000 feet. Put up our flaps. Auto throttle always gives you a headache. We'll just turn that off for now because I'm not sure why we're losing airspeed. All seems under control now. So we're above 10,000 feet. We can increase our speed. So we can proceed with our climb. So after takeoff checklist, landing gear flaps up. And that concludes after takeoff. So we'll leave it now. Descent, we'll come back to that. So I'll just load my engine display there, just to monitor the engines. just discovered they can actually turn on this program. Small things we were looking for, laboring for our units. This time. Africa radar, Kenya 304 is now out of flight level 150, descending to flight level 140.
Kenya 304 heavy leaving my area, monitor uniform 122.8.
Thank you very much for your service. We'll announce my intentions on the Unicom 122.8. Goodbye, Kenya 304. So let's look at our landing checklist. descent, notes, auto brake, approach briefing. Altimeters are set. We are now landing. Steel brakes. Max 5, slow down. Just slow down the aircraft a little bit. That's it. Slow down to 180 knots. Okay, so hopefully this time we will get it right. Good descent profile. There's the runway.
Caution, terrain. 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 Terrain, terrain, pull up. 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 20, 10.
Okay, so that concludes my video for this week. As I said, we'll just have some more videos with Vatsim, and I finally figured out how to embed my camera. So hopefully now we'll also have live sessions. I've been reluctant to do that because I've been trying to set up the software needed. So finally getting Streamlabs set up, so maybe from next week we should have some live stream flights. But for now, unfortunately, with Vatsim, we were lucky to find ATC in JKIA, so we'll just now aim for another flight that has. So that concludes this week's video. We're always flying from Seychelles to Nairobi, so I've created this one that's from Nairobi to Seychelles. Tip for flying this approach: always flying on runway 31. The runway 13 approach is terrible. If you come with an aircraft like this, you will totally miss it. Anyway, so that concludes this week's video. Like, share and subscribe. Vatsim. See you next week.